Hello, fabulous listeners. Thanks for tuning in to Old Bodies Outside. This is your host, Brian Peterson. This episode's guest is Jonathan Ladson, who used to hate running, but recently ran the fastest known time, as in the FKT, for the 91-mile Capital Beltway route in Washington, D.C. Additionally, that was his second longest run of all time. So Jonathan, first off, I want to say congrats on your FKT. That is amazing. I loved learning about it. And secondly, I wanted to let you know that you inspire me as a runner. It's fantastic to see you out there consistently grinding, getting after it, and inspiring others. And I've been a runner for a long time, and it's just great to hear your story. Great to see you out there grinding away. So I want to let you know that you inspire me, and it's an honor to have you on Old Bodies Outside.
First off, thank you. I really appreciate it. And for me, doing these accomplishments, that's one thing that I really love focusing on, is just pushing other people to try to accomplish something big for themselves. So thank you for that.
Yeah. And so let's kind of talk about accomplishments. I personally am a person that I think that's my fuel in life. And in life, like, yes, I do need some simple pleasures and some amenities and whatnot, but over accomplishing goals and having maybe a daily sense of accomplishment is something that I really enjoy. And I wanted to hear about, why is a sense of accomplishment important for you?
The sense of accomplishment is it actually does a lot for me too. It really just sets the tone. And then for me, like, my thing is to always get up early in the morning and do something productive, because I love starting the day with a win. And whether if it's small or big, because from just even getting up at 4 o'clock, when I said I'm going to get up at 4 and do that, let's say 4 or 5 mile run, even when I don't feel like it, but even if I don't hit the paces, but just knowing that I got it done, it just sets the tone just for the day. Just that sense of accomplishment, just, okay, I did it even though I didn't want to. So just that feeling of starting off with a win is just fabulous.
Yeah, it's a great way to start the day. And it reminds me of, I heard some sort of recommendation in the military. Not that we're in the military. I don't know if you've served or not. I have not. But in the military, supposedly starting off the day and making your bed is the start of the sense of accomplishment for the day. Have you ever heard that before?
Yeah, I have. There's actually a motivational speaker. I believe he was in the Navy. I can't remember his name, but he wrote a book, and then he talked about the same thing too. And then over the years, listening to a lot of motivational videos and stuff, I've heard the same thing. And that actually got me started into, okay, make your bed first thing in the morning. Because before I was like, oh, I'll just take care of it when I come back from my run or whenever I get a chance. But yeah, usually first thing I do is get up and make that bed and then go on about my day.
Nice. So you said you wake up a lot for running at 4 a.m. I'm a 5 a.m. runner, and I consider myself an early runner. If you're waking up to train, oftentimes at 4 a.m., what time do you go to bed?
And so that's one of the unique things about me. Usually I go to bed maybe anywhere between like 11 or 12. Sometimes I do try to get to bed early, but for me, 3 to 4 hours is good for me, and I'm good to go, ready to rock and roll. So
Wow.
usually on average, I try to get up at 4, but there's a lot of days where I get up at 3, because days if I know I'm just going to be a struggle, I like to give myself like that hour to make that coffee or to stretch or to try to get mentally focused. But if I'm going to sleep like around 10 or 11, then yeah, 4 is usually the time where I'm up. And usually
Nice.
just because I'm up, I start my runs like around 5 or so.
Yeah. So if you're starting running that early. So I started running today probably around 5:20. I got out in 20 minutes. I think I needed a headlamp for, I don't know, about probably 30, 35 minutes. How long are you typically wearing a headlamp right now at this time of year, with it being today's August 14th?
Mm-hmm. So usually I'm not wearing a headlamp because where I live, I'm lucky enough that there's a lot of like stores and street lights around where I don't really need one. Um, Usually on my longer runs, I'd bring a headlamp, and that's usually for like nighttime.
Yeah.
But yeah, usually in the morning time around those times, because I'm a street runner, I should actually say too. Um, yeah, so I don't really need one.
Okay. Nice. And so Have you ever thought about if you like sunrises better or sunsets better? It's kind of a weird question.
No, it's not at all. Because I try to explain this to people, and they're like, "Wait, I don't really get what you're saying." Because I love running more in the early mornings versus at nighttime when it gets dark. I don't know why, but I prefer like running first thing in the morning when it's dark versus at night. But yeah,
Yeah,
I love the sunsets. I mean the sunrises. I'm sorry.
yeah, I agree. I'm a sunrise person. I think with sunrises, maybe I feel like I sense the potential of the day, or it's time to have a start the day with that accomplishment. And a sunset, I'm kind of like winding down for the day. And so
Yeah.
I've always been a morning runner, and I don't know if that's because I like sunrises better or what.
hmm And then for me, just getting up in the morning, just knowing the fact that I'm up before the sun, going back to like our daily accomplishments, like that right there, just like a huge mental boost or mental, just gets everything going for me. Just knowing that I'm halfway through my run and the sun's not even up yet, and knowing that majority of the, or I should say, the state where I'm at is still sleeping or just getting out of bed. So it's just like a huge sense of satisfaction.
Yeah, yeah. Knowing that everyone else is sleeping and you're out there grinding, like there's something that feels
Mhm.
good about that.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. And so have you always, when, as I was preparing for this podcast, I came across you got an expansive background doing Taekwondo. You got an expansive background boxing. Have you always been a person that functions on low levels of sleep?
No. Early on, like even during my Taekwondo days in middle school and high school, like I used to just love just sleeping all day, just staying in my room, just sleeping. I'm not really sure exactly when it started. Maybe in my early 20s or so. Yeah, I would say around then. That's when it actually started. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, well, enjoy it now while you're young, because once when you hit your 30s, then it's going to go away." But still, it's been working wonders for me. And I do have to add, I do take naps when it is necessary because I do know sleep is important and it's a part of recovery and part of my success with running. But yeah, majority of the time, as long as I'm getting those 4 or 5 hours of sleep, then I'm good. I'm energized.
Love it. That's cool. So am I pronouncing Taekwondo correctly? I thought I heard you pronounce it that way on one of your Instagram posts, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, so people they usually say taekwondo or taekwondo, so either or, just I guess it's just personal preference or how you say it.
Okay. I wasn't sure if there was a way that was um, the way that's said traditionally in its
hmm
traditional practice.
Yeah, for me, all the years that I've done it, it's always been like a 50-50.
Really? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. So with you just mentioned some running recovery, and obviously sleep is beneficial for that. What other things do you do for running recovery? Like there's been an inspiring online trend of people taking ice baths. Like Andy Glaze, you'll see him like get into an ice bath that's just like nothing but pure ice, pretty much, like
hmm
very little water. What other things do you do to help with your recovery so that you can pop back up and your legs are ready to do another 10 miler or whatever how many miles you're going to do?
I have a lot of the foam rollers, and then the rolling sticks, and I also have the recovery boots. So I do all of that, and I also usually after a long run, then I would come and prop my legs up on the wall just to kind of get like that reverse blood flow because I heard that helps with recovery a lot. And a lot of stretching. I'm getting back into that because I'm super tight all the time, so I usually have to stretch a lot more than your average person, so a lot of stretching definitely helps too. And you also mentioned the ice bath, and for somebody like me who's super sensitive to the cold, I do love ice baths, but I just hate like that feeling of cold because I'm really sensitive to cold. You can give me my 90 or 100-degree temps, and I love running in it. Soon as it's 60 or below, I'm complaining every day on the internet. But yeah, there's something about that ice bath that just really helps speed up recovery.
Yeah. So are you a person? Do you continue to run through the winter too?
I get out there because I know I have to because I know like there's a lot of races, but usually for people like when they follow my Strava, they're like, dude, you do like majority of your runs on the treadmill, if not like almost all of them. Yeah, I love the treadmill. Even now in the summertime, like I'll get on the treadmill just to, for that soft surface, and that for me that also helps with recovery too, because that soft surface versus always pounding out there on the pavement. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love the treadmill. I'll do speed runs. This year alone, I've done a marathon and I ran 27 miles on the treadmill. So yeah, I love
Wow.
it. Yeah, it
Nice. That's
helps
awesome.
with that mental toughness, and we can get more into that later.
Yeah, it certainly helps with that mental toughness. Have you ever gotten on one of the treadmills that I personally have not. The treadmill with the biggest incline I've gotten onto is like a 15% incline, but I'm seeing these treadmills like at like 30, 40% incline where people are like literally like power hiking up it. Have you ever been on one of those?
No, I have not been on it, but I've seen the same thing. I just want to give it a try just to see what it feels like and just to say I've done it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, hey, you mentioned mental toughness and you have shown a lot of dedication in your running. You've talked about how, your dedication prevails even when you don't have a strong motivation for the day. And so I want to know, where did your dedication, your mental toughness, where did that all come from in your life?
I'd say it started off with my parents and then with my brother because my dad he was in the military, so he kind of was tough on us, but it wasn't in a bad way; it was a good way. Like that's where like I really learned had my first sense of dedication, I would say, and just being super determined and following like a schedule. So it started off there, and then with Taekwondo too, just always being around guys who were a lot older than me and who were much better than me. They were on the USA AAU team, and so they just always being around them and learning from them. And then with boxing too, that played a huge factor in it too. Just always having to train all the time and then just being around professionals and learning and seeing what made them become world champions or Olympians. So all of that played a huge role into it. And then even now with running too, just taking bits and pieces from other people, seeing what they're doing and how they're getting through those tough moments and stuff.
Yeah. And do you think without those lessons in life, do you think running would lack its appeal for you?
Um, I would maybe a little bit. Yeah, I would say.
Yeah, it's I was thinking about that for myself too, because it's a really hard question to
Yeah.
say, hey Brian, like what got you into running? And it was a very simple thing when I was younger. I saw my older brother running, so I did
Hmm.
it. But in terms of maintaining it and continuing it as an adult, I don't know. I think it goes back to, you mentioned earlier, sense of accomplishment. I think that sense of accomplishment is something that I just love having that every day. It feels good. It's
Yeah.
satisfying.
And then for somebody like me, I also have a hard time sitting down, sitting still, and doing nothing. So I guess like running also like helps with that. Like I never really been a big TV person. When I was younger, like my parents tried to punish me and take my TV away, and I felt that I was actually more happier without the TV. And so even now into my adulthood, I rarely watch TV. So yeah, so running just like helps like me doing something. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and
so, go ahead.
well, I was going to say, running the TV is a very convenient, easy to access type of pleasure. For me, like running has, and I guess it's tied up in sense of accomplishment, but a delayed gratification where I got to work, I got to work, I got to work, and then I feel good afterwards. And I guess maybe that's what is type two fun.
Hmm. Yeah, and for me, yeah, I'm the same with like that's my type of fun. Just knowing that I got to put the work in, and then I will see X, Y, and Z results at the end, or just knowing that I'm actually getting out there, stepping outside of my comfort zone, and doing that long run when I don't want to, or when it's pouring, raining, and I know a lot of people usually say that, oh, that's the stay home and relax, watch TV type of thing, but just mentally getting out there, and so it goes back to that sense of accomplishment. So yeah, just things like that just makes it fun for me when other people are like, oh my God, like it's raining, storming, or it's super cold or super hot outside. And how do you find this enjoyable? And I think that goes back to the mindset. It's just what you tell yourself. And for me, it's like when I wake up, I don't really check the weather. I really rarely check the weather, unless if it's the winter season when it's snowing and stuff. But usually, a lot of people they'll get up and whatever the weather is, and that's their mindset for the day. Oh, if it's raining, oh, it's going to be a horrible day. Traffic is going to be bad. No, I really don't like to have that mindset. Whatever the weather's going to be, it's going to be. And I don't want that to dictate my attitude for the day.
Yeah, I think that's a great tidbit. And so having that mindset and having that positive attitude every day, isn't easy to do. And we're
Yeah.
all, human beings here, and there's days where we don't have that motivation. We don't have that positive attitude. There might be, something that's trying to be an excuse for us, like the weather. What do you tell yourself? How do you talk to yourself in those moments where, it's a little bit more challenging of a day to get out and run?
Definitely the first thing I would do is just when you get to a certain level, like I would tell people not to really talk to yourself, because once when you start talking to yourself, then that's when you start finding more and more excuses. Like for me, I love setting everything out the night before, so that way on days where I don't really have motivation, it's like, okay, everything's already set up, so just get up, do what you have to do, just jump right into your clothes and then head out the door. Because once when you're out the door, then usually you can get the ball rolling. That's usually when you find like the motivation that you're looking for. But a lot of times if you're sitting there talking to yourself, trying to find the motivation, then 9 times out of 10 it really won't come. But there, of course, there are days where I really do have to talk to myself, like what you were saying earlier. We're human; we don't really have the motivation or the desire to go out there. So usually, I try to keep the end result in mind. Try to find like my why. Why am I doing this? What purpose am I serving? Or how is this going to help me? Um, a few hours from now, like I was saying, like it helps the day going for me. And so just going back and knowing that feeling that I get after I run when I know I really didn't want to definitely helps things going. So just mentally like playing a lot of that stuff through my head. Or if I had like a past failure on a bad race, I'm like, maybe if me getting out there and pushing a little bit more today, even though I know I truly don't want to, just pushing a little bit harder, would that help me when I get into those dark zones during another race? So just small little mental things like that. And of course,
Yeah.
there are days where I do love going online and finding like a motivational video, even though I do tell people motivation really doesn't really work. It's all about being dedicated, because motivation only lasts but so long. But listening to those motivational videos, it definitely does like help get the ball rolling. But I also do truly believe that it's all about being dedicated, really.
Yeah, well, I totally agree. I 100% agree. But I got to say, having you on the podcast and talking about running, I'm feeling very motivated right now.
Thank you. And for me, even though like I am super focused on my accomplishments and I do have huge goals, but along this journey, that's what I found that like really inspires me to keep going, and just motivating people using my story and my testimonies, whether if it's something horrible that happened during a race or during training. I love just putting everything out there to help other people feel that what they're going through is normal, or that, okay, like we are human, and you can still have these type of days or feel these type of pains, but still know that you're going to see progress at the end of the day. So I just love just going out there and trying to motivate people with my testimony and my story and journey.
Yeah, and your testimony and story, like it's something that is relatable, because it's just,
Mhm.
like, hey, I'm a human too. There's days where I don't feel motivated. I got to keep my discipline going. And I think you offered up some really great advice, and that is, just get right into the routine. Like, don't even think about it. Get into the routine, have everything laid out. I thought that was fantastic advice, and I can definitely relate to that. I also like, if that's not working, you got, why am I doing this? And so for myself, one of the things that I like to do is I'm a 5 a.m. wake up guy. So I wake up at 5 a.m., no snoozes allowed. And the first thing that goes through my head is I try to tell myself 3 words: I got this. So it's like, I got this. And then I'm getting out of bed. I'm getting into the routine of going and putting on the shorts, putting on the shirt, putting on the shoes, get my water ready. I usually run with, like, at this time of year, one water bottle in my hand. Now, that's not to say that that doesn't work every day. I mean, that is a go-to for me. That's the first step of getting out of the bed and getting up and getting going. And I would say it works 90-95% of the time, but there's days where human beings, and, I'm not going to have
Yep.
it. The why factor, I've been relying on a piece of why that really helps me a lot. And that is, I love to do ultra marathons. And one of the things that I get really nervous about is I love to do mountain ultra marathons, but I do not live in the mountains. I live in Kansas. And so I worry about having a safe passage. I'm going to be up at elevation. There's going to be a lot of uphill. There's going to be a lot of downhill. And so my why that's really been working for me if this doesn't work, when I say I got this, if that doesn't work, my why is the safety through the passage of the race and just maintaining safety, getting to the end of the race. Like, hey, I got to get up so that I'm safe on this day when I go and then try and attempt this race. And so I thought you offered really great advice with kind of like, hey, there's times where the discipline doesn't work. And, maybe the why factor is something that you can fall back on.
Mm-hmm. And then also too, like there's like another piece, like usually if I don't get up and moving or do something physical, then usually by 7 or 8, I'm like truly just dragging. I don't know why, and that's why another reason why me just sleeping for like that 6 or 8 hours, that recommended time, just doesn't work for me. I've tried it and I feel like horrible, and I also feel like I missed half the day. So just knowing that I'm kind of like trying to play catch up, or knowing that I'm going to feel horrible, then that also definitely just helps me like just get things going.
Yeah, what's funny is there's some days where if I don't have a race coming up, I do relax in my training a little bit, and there'll be like mornings where I don't have the dedication. I don't really have a why statement because I don't have a race coming up, and I'll pass on the workout for the day, and so I'll sleep a couple more hours or sleep one more hour, and I'll wake up and I'll be mad at myself and I'll be
Yes, yeah.
cranky and irritable. Like, what? So I've learned that about myself, like, and that's another why statement, I guess. Like, hey, don't allow yourself to wake up cranky and irritable. Get out the door, get your sense of accomplishment, get the day started on a good foot, literally.
Mm-hmm. And another thing too, in which the cell phones and me being a parent, so it's kind of like I really hate just first thing in the morning seeing the kids get on the phones and all that stuff. But unless if it's productive, because there's a lot of days where I can't find any motivation or anything, and then so I'm really big on Strava. So just going on Strava and seeing somebody else complete their run, I'm like, okay, well, if these people are up before me completing the runs, and I got friends in Ireland, Australia, so of course there's a time difference, but just when it pops up on my phone, it's like, oh, they got their morning run done, even though it's probably like midday or night for them. So it's just kind of like, okay, well, if they're up doing it, then so should I. And then
Yeah,
also
that's
too,
really
I
cool.
think a lot of people need to have friends who hold them accountable. Um, just having those friends who truly can tell you the truth, without you being offended or anything like that. Because I know a lot of times that we want people around us to make us feel good, and kind of if we tell them our excuse, then they're kind of like, okay, well, yeah, like it's okay to relax today because X, Y, and Z is going on in your day. So I think that we should have like at least like one or two people who will tell you like, no, like that's an excuse. Like just go ahead and get it done. Like just pretty much someone who holds you accountable. And I have a lot of friends like that. And so I'm currently roughly around like 1,500 day running streak where we have to run a mile a day. So in our group, we have buddies who would joke like if they see you online, they're like, okay, you're online, but have you ran yet? And so that kind of like, it's like, okay, well, I need to get off the phone and go run.
Yeah, that's really cool. So that kind of accountability from other people. And, as you were explaining that, I was thinking about accountability is so important. I was also thinking
Yeah.
about surrounding yourself with good people, sincere, genuine people that can call you out. And so good community, I think, is really important. And that's really impressive. So you said you're on a 1,500 day streak right
Yeah.
now?
Roughly. Yes. Mm-hmm, yeah.
Roughly. That's so cool. So that's how many years is that?
Ah,
It's not like what, over 3 years probably, right? Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Probably like 3.5 or so. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, even a mile a day is immensely hard to do at times, especially if you got the flu or your kid or kids aren't feeling good and, you got to stay home and do that stuff. What
And
has
then
been,
for me too, during COVID, I caught COVID, and that was like one of the most like rough. So COVID, it wasn't really super bad for me, but of course I could feel it. So just running through that, just experiencing things with my lungs that I never felt before. So that kind of was a challenge, but then it was also motivating, just knowing that the previous day I got through it. So it kind of encouraged me to get through it again for the next day and the next day after that. Even though it was still hard, but it was just like mentally reassuring. Oh, you can do the hard things, the tough things.
yeah, even when you're experiencing something that no one really knows what it is at the time being.
Yes. And then it's kind of like, okay, since no one knows about it, is this truly something safe I should be doing? So I kind of really
Yeah.
had to learn more about my body, just paying attention to the breathing. Oh, if I'm breathing in, do I feel a sharp pain? Or maybe I should slow down a little bit. So it kind of was a good thing and a bad thing. So the good thing, yeah, I just really learned more about myself and just paying attention to the small little minor things that was going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think like with you being a father, there's got to be some thoughts of setting a really good example. And I don't know, how old your kid or kids are, but that's got to be something that also can probably serve as a why statement.
Yes, it really is because like what they say, kids don't really listen to what you say; they follow what you do. So even though I do a lot of preaching to them, don't do this, don't do that, and I know more. So for them learning, it's just through like my actions, and especially through like this running journey that I've been on. Just them seeing me at my lowest point, just going overcoming those days or those moments, and then just achieving the end result or whatever my goal was. So I love just being that prime example for them, just using all of that stuff.
Yeah, that's
And
fantastic.
I take my running and just relate it to their school work. Just always think positive because there's going to be a lot of days where you're nervous about a test or excited about an event or something, but you just have to stay the course.
Yeah, I think like there's a lot of ways in which a day of life or an hour of life is kind of equatable to a marathon. There's going to
Yeah.
be ups and downs. You got to make sure you stay in there, stick with the process. I feel like running is a very powerful metaphor on a daily basis or a weekly basis to, see that life has its ups and downs, but you got to continue with the process to achieve the goal.
hmm and also too, one of the main things I love is that you really have to work for it, and it's kind of like life too. Like there's almost you're never really just going to get things just handed to you, really, unless you're lucky, and which I really don't believe in luck because all I've ever had was bad luck. But yeah, but I just love like just teaching my kids like kind of like with the running, like even though it's kind of like a team sport, but you really have to do your part in order to achieve what it is that you want to achieve. So I really just love just pushing that to them.
Yeah, I really do love that a lot about running, and that is that I'm in charge of putting the hard work in. I can get motivated by YouTube videos. I can get motivated by Jonathan Ladson, but in the end, like I got to put the hard work in to get the hard work out. And there's something about that responsibility that I really love because then I start seeing the product. My legs start getting faster and faster. I start being able to run further and further, and that's something that I really enjoy about running.
Me too. Yep, just knowing that I put all the work and the miles in, and then just seeing that in reward. Yep, in the same way.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, I wanted to ask you something earlier. What branch did your dad serve in? My father served in the Navy,
Yeah, my dad was in the military.
but what branch? Like Army,
Yeah,
Marines,
Army. Yes.
Army. Okay,
Yeah.
nice, nice, nice. Yeah, my dad served in it, and I think that you were mentioning that your dad probably had with the way that he fathered. There was some influence from the military, and I felt the same with that with my dad in terms of he's very disciplined, very disciplined. Wakes
Mhm.
up early every day for work, leaves the house, really neat. Makes
Yeah.
the bed. He carries himself with a certain type of attitude, and those are things like we're talking about the influence on kids and seeing your actions. I mean, that's the type of stuff that I remember as a kid.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, my dad was the same way. Yeah, just always keeping your room clean, and then us being kids, we're like, oh, it's perfect, it's fine. I'm like, I know where things are. It's like, no, that's not how things work. Like, yes, you got to put it away in its proper spot, and also just going back to he was really big on just getting the clothes ready the day before, and so a lot of stuff like that stuck with me, and I really love that you must plan for the next day because without a plan then everything is just you're really just going into the day like blindfolded. So just like not only just having my clothes ready, just mentally knowing, oh, am I going to run speed work, or if I wake up and don't really feel like doing the speed work, what's my backup plan? For me, I really don't follow a strict plan. As long as I get my long run or the speed work in X amount of days, then usually I just wake up and assess how I'm feeling that day and then just go on into the workout that I'm supposed to do. Or if I don't feel like it, then I'll just switch it up. But of
Yeah,
course, there
but
are days when I'm not feeling it, where I have to get through it, because there's days where you're not going to feel 100% on the marathon.
yeah, and man, those speed training days can be tough to get that motivation going and whatnot. But I
Yeah.
think it still sounds like you have a plan though, and you have a plan that has some flexibility to it because you know
Yeah.
yourself, you know how you function, you know how to optimize yourself. But with we've talked about how you don't have a background in running, and when you were first getting into running, have you ever had a coach or anything like that to kind of like learn these processes, or do you just look this stuff up and kind of self coach yourself?
When I first was getting into it, I everything was just self taught. I was just on Google watching videos and everything, just learning literally everything step by step. And not saying there's anything wrong with the coach, but I'm kind of happy I went that route, because I was truly able to learn about myself, what works, what doesn't work. Versus, not saying every coach is like this, but versus just jumping into a team and kind of having someone do what's been working for their other children. And that's one thing what I loved about like my boxing coach. He took what I had and what I knew and just sharpened it, versus trying to get me to fight how other fighters were. And that's what made me unique, because with boxing, a lot of times a lot of boxers like to go for the knockout or the that head punch. But for me, I for some reason I just love just being in close and going to the body, doing that body work, and just draining a person that way. um, so he really kind of just really stuck that with me in my head, just kind of learn to take what a person has and just sharpen it. And of course, you may have to change bits and pieces of a person, but just knowing that I could be myself, and I could take what I had and just make it better, versus changing everything and then not liking it no more. So that really is what I loved about running, and coming into it just physically learning, how do I feel doing during this run? How do I feel taking a, a gel or so? Because even now, when I run a marathon or even my my ultra runs, I really don't really feel. And I know a lot of coaches, they would press their athletes to feel, and I know that you need to. But what works for me is, as long as I feel leading up to the race and feel really well before the race, I'm fine during the race. Of course,
Yeah.
there are those times and days where towards the end I'm super hungry and struggling, but I've tried a lot of things and ended up having just really bad stomach issues, and my body just doesn't really get along with that stuff during the race. But I'm
Well,
still testing things out.
I gotta say, I mean, you've curiously tested yourself. You know how you function. You know what works well for you. Why go against that just because someone else said so?
Yeah. And I have had coaches along the way, and people help me along the way too. But
Yeah.
for me, it's just like you said, like just really knowing ourselves. And I don't think that people really actually take the time to actually really learn yourself. I think it's just, okay, my coach prescribed this and they say it's going to do X, Y, and Z, so they follow it. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. Like everyone's different, but for me, this is just really what has been working for me. And if a coach does come along and, hey, I can take what you have and make it a little better, of course I'm not going to say no. So I'm definitely open to advice, in which that's why I put a lot of my struggles or my achievements online, because whether it's good feedback or feedback, I'm open to it all and I can handle it.
Yeah, yeah. And I being able to handle that feedback and being accepting of it and being humble towards it just makes you a better person. It makes us all better personally,
Mm-hmm.
like, and that's something that is a hard lesson I've learned in life is I used to fight critiques, and it's like,
Me too.
hey, like this, this person's helping you out. And it's like, okay, like I need to be humble towards that and see how I have that weakness and how I can bridge that.
And yeah, I was the same way. One of the hardest things for me to learn was understanding the difference between feedback and criticism. Because a lot of times, like, oh, you're just criticizing me or what I'm doing, but no, it's like they're just trying to give you feedback. Like, it may sound brutal, but if you actually slow down, take the time to really listen, like, okay, they may have a point. Like, this actually means something, or it can actually help me.
Yeah. And it can make you better at whatever you're doing.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So with running, there is so much that goes on throughout a run. So you've done a 91-mile run, and you said that was your second longest run. What's your longest run?
It was roughly about 104 miles. When Mike Wardian ran across the country last year, his last day, he was running on average like somewhere between 50 and 55 miles a day. But on his last one, he wanted to finish out and go strong and do a 100 mile. And so the day before the 100, I ran 55 miles with him, and I just joked about, just always wanting to run a 100 miler, and just because for me, I'm always trying to look for that next thing to push myself, because I love just things that make me step outside of my comfort zone, because it's going to make me grow, whether it's physically or mentally. And so I kind of just joked about it with him. I was like, yeah, one day I want to do it. And then he was like, hey, I have one of the best crews, and him being a phenomenal runner, pretty much a legend, super accomplished runner. And I was like, what better way for me to do it with his crew and with somebody with his experience and who I know is going to get me through this. So what better way? And we joked about it. And I think it was like either that night or early the next morning, he was like, hey, if you do want to come out, here's the address. We have room for you and your stuff in the RV. And I was like, dude, like, opportunities like this don't really come often. So I was like, hell yeah, I'm going to do it. And even if I fail, like, I'm just going to go out there just for the experience, try to learn as much as possible. And then just being out there with one of the people that I looked up to when I started getting into running, like, just that experience alone would have made it worth it. So I was like, forget what happens. We'll just go with it and see how it goes. So yeah, so that was my first longest run, 104, maybe 5 miles.
And that was 104 miles of doing 55 miles the day before.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And then the real kicker was that his last maybe 3 miles, he just gunned it, and I hung on with him for I think like the last 2 miles, and we were running at like a 6:30 pace, and then he had to have been running faster than that because he was a few feet ahead of me. So yeah, so he truly finished strong.
Yeah, he's a very gifted runner. That's amazing to hear after that long. And how long did it take him? So tell me more about this running across the country that he did. You know more about than I did. Where did he start and where did he finish?
So he started in San Francisco. So he wanted to run from ocean to ocean. So he started in San Francisco and he finished in Delaware. Yeah, Delaware.
And did he set the record for that? Was there a record to be broken?
So I think he set some type of record. So usually the record from running across the country goes from I believe San Francisco, but they end in New York. So he ran through Delaware, and so part of him running along, I believe it was Route 66. I could be wrong, but I believe that's what it is. He wanted, so it was called Running Home. So he has a house in Arlington and in Delaware too. So along this path, he stopped at both places.
Oh, nice.
And so he like actually made it like super meaningful. And along with that, he was raising money for Team World Vision for clean water. And so his goal was $100,000, and I believe he raised maybe 130, maybe 140,000.
That is so impressive. So does he run that nonprofit? Did you say Team War Division, like named after his last name?
No, World.
Oh,
So
World.
Team World Vision, yes.
Team World Vision. Man, what a
Yes,
great
and it is
guy.
a
That's
nonprofit
fantastic.
company.
Yeah.
And that's how I got into it, because I knew nothing about it, but along that run, just because another good thing about it is that he would post where he would be and his routes, and so he just encouraged people to come out and run with him, or you can just come out and just say hi and take a picture. Yeah, he literally would just stop and not turn anyone away, and that right there just made me appreciate the type of person he is a lot more.
Yeah, and I know he probably was the one that inspired the Capital Beltway, just going and running it to begin with, right? Not knowing how it's going to go. But then you did something afterwards that you and I were emailing about before we record this, and that was the Demolition Mile.
Yeah.
And so do you want to talk about the Demolition Mile the next day?
Yeah, so usually for him, after every, it doesn't matter if it's a marathon or ultra or whatever a race, usually the next day he goes out and just runs a all out mile. And he just pretty much like inspired me just to, because usually after a race, I like to just do my 1 mile streak, because always in my head I've always told myself,
Oh,
oh, I'm hurting, I'm struggling, so that's all I can do. And so after I did the FKT, the Beltway run, I headed out to do that mile. But then I remembered back to when he did the Hard Rock 100, after he inspired all those people to go out with him the next day and run that fast mile. I was like, you know what? Let me just change my mindset. Instead of telling myself I can only do that mile at a slow pace, I was like, let me just remove that from my head and see what I can do. So, and I think I was about like a half a mile in. I was about ready to turn around because I ran a half mile out and I was planning to run a half mile back. But I was like, you know what? I was like, let's just give it a go. I was like, whatever happens, happens. I was like, but me just always saying I can't do this or I can only run a mile. I was like, I'm limiting myself and I won't be able to see what I'm truly capable of. So I went out. I was like, you know what? I was like, just go for it. And I think I ended up running like right around a 6 minute mile or right under a 6 minute mile. And
Wow.
the first lap, because I ran to a track, the first lap it hurt, but I was like, you know what? I was like, you've definitely been here before. I was like, but don't just focus on the pain. Just focus on just making sure you're relaxed and just enjoying it and just keep seeing what happens. And so I
Yeah.
literally just took it lap by lap. I didn't even look at my watch to see the pace or anything until I was done. And I was like, wow, I was like, that kind of just like reassured that like we put these mental chains on ourselves and say that we can't do something, but when in actuality we really can.
Yeah, those mental chains are real, and it's
Yes.
something that I have been working on, especially this past spring. My wife passed me a book by an author named Dr. Joe Dispenza, and it's titled Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. And it's essentially breaking these kind of negative mental thoughts that have
Mm-hmm.
become a trend mentally. And there are things that we think about in certain circumstances. This trend of negative thoughts comes up. And it talks about in the book that there's scientific evidence that we can change that negative thinking with positive thinking, and that rewires our brains in a more positive fashion, and we're able to accomplish more by breaking those negative chains that we kind of set up to overcome maybe situations when we were younger or to survive
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But they can be broken. You can change your neural makeup. And so I was glad to hear you talking about mindset, because I think mindset it's so powerful. It's maybe the most powerful thing we have.
Yeah, it really is, and in which I'm really happy that on one of your episodes you had I believe Georgia Miller. I believe
Yeah.
I'm saying her name right. Yeah, and I believe she's a mental performance coach, and she really touches on that a lot. So I definitely would give the advice for people to go and give that episode a listen. But for me, I'm really big on mental toughness because really even through sports or just life alone without that positive attitude or knowing how to stay positive in a rough situation, then you're just really just going to have a really rough time. And then so one of the things that I love doing, and I started it with my kids when they were in school, I think like 2 or 3 years ago, and I do want to get back into it. It's like, instead of just saying how was your day, it's like tell me 2 or 3 positive things and then one negative thing. And so that just like kind of like wires them that there's more positive that you can get throughout the day
Ah.
um, versus the negative. So even if there's something negative that happened or something negative that you think was big, like maybe she failed. My daughter's 13. Maybe she failed one of her biggest important tests. Okay, that happened. But what else happened throughout the day? What positive happened? Like, did you learn something from failing that test, or how did you feel? Um, Whether in a different class or so, I just want them to know like whatever that one thing is should not determine the rest of your day. Like you still have 23, 22, 21 more hours to rewire your thinking for the rest of the day. And then
Yeah.
another thing that my favorite um, speaker Zig Ziglar says that we were all born winners, but we're taught to be losers. And I think that that mental toughness comes into that because even when we're younger, we're taught don't do this, you'll hurt yourself, or don't touch that, it may be hot. So we're just kind of like wired to, I don't really want to say fail, but to really stay into like this safety net ever since a child. Even when you have like big goals growing up, a lot of people are like, oh, be realistic. But what actually is realistic? Because when the first person, the Wright brothers created the plane, nobody thought that was realistic.
Right.
Running a sub 4 minute mile, nobody thought that was realistic until somebody had the, I would say maybe the right mental capacity or the mental toughness to step outside of those certain boundaries and give it a go. And that's one thing what I love about this journey that I'm on is that instead of saying, oh, I would never be a runner, I became a runner. I would never run a marathon, I ran a marathon. I would never be an ultra runner, and I'm an ultra runner. Where I would never qualify to be an elite field, and I did that. So my biggest thing is just to never say never, and just always go into things with a positive mindset, because a positive mindset really determines really everything, because you can be good, the best runner, the best writer, the best speaker, But if you're always telling yourself, oh, I can't, I'm going to fail, then of course you're going to fail. Because you first of all, you won't even have the courage to do it. And then when you do it, you're going to be so stuck on failing that you're going to miss the overall opportunity that you have to become great.
Yeah, Jonathan, that's fantastic. You adopt your mindset. It's like if you're telling yourself you're not going to be able to do it, you're going to adopt it and you're going to make that your reality.
Yes.
It's so true. And thanks for listening to the episode of Georgia Miller. She really was a wonderful guest, and thanks for giving her a shout out. She added a lot of great quality content to the podcast. I'll be sure to tag her on this episode so she hears her shout out. That was cool.
Thanks.
Mindset. Go for it.
One of the main things that she hit, and which I truly agree with, is that like we spend so much time training for work or training for sports, but we need to spend just as much time training our mindset. Because again, like I was saying, like you can pretty much be the best, but without that mindset, then you just won't find your full potential or even surpass where you're at now.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you got me thinking of Kobe Bryant just now.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you like studying Kobe Bryant?
So I didn't really study him, but just a lot of his speeches I did. And then one of his trainers, what's his name? Oh, then this is really bad because I read all his books and watch his videos. But he's really big on mental toughness. It'll come to me when I'm not thinking about it. But yeah, his trainer really just grinds, just always staying positive and always just finding the best out of every bad situation.
Yeah, well, I loved how Kobe. He's you got a lot of similar practices to him. Like I think he got up at 4 a.m. every day to practice, but he also didn't look at failure as failure. He'd be like, "Hey, like I have a weakness, like I'm not good at left-handed layups or something." And so, then he's like, okay, like that's something for me to practice on. That's something for me to get better at. And it was just like a big game of him getting better and better. Years went by and then now he's Kobe Bryant, where he wasn't always the Kobe Bryant that we came to know. But he had this like really great capacity for self-reflection and self-evaluation to find his weaknesses to get better. And I think that that's something that's so important in life.
Mm-hmm. So going back, the guy's name is Tim Grover. So he has a lot of great motivational speeches and books, but he's like one of those ones who's like, okay, just what you're saying right now is just BS or it's excuses, like cut it out, just stay laser focused. And going back to Kobe Bryant, for me, I'm really big on fail your way to success. And when I say that, I don't mean just, purposely just not study or something, but when I mean failing, like try to push yourself as hard as you can. And then when you fail, learn from that until you become successful at it. So with me, I set really high goals for myself, not knowing if I can achieve it or if I can. I just love setting those high goals because you never know what can happen. So my whole motto is fail your way to success. And I just love like the acronym first attempt in learning or at learning. I'm sorry.
So fail your way to success.
Success.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. So
and then the fail part, first attempt in learning, because that's really what happens when you fail. As long as you have a positive mindset and really just take the things that went wrong from it, then that's all it is. It's just a learning experience. It's not the end of it. It's not life's over or any of that stuff.
Yeah, I use fail forward.
Yeah, that too. Yep. Mm-hmm. I didn't that, and I like that. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So my wife
making progress.
Yeah, and it like you said, it's not like life is over.
Mm-hmm.
So my wife, she owns a couple yoga studios, and the yoga studio, her brand is called Chapter 5, and it's after a poem. I forget who the author is, but the poem has 5 chapters. And in the first chapter, this person's walking down a street and falls in a hole. The next day, the person's walking down the street and falls in the hole. In the next chapter, chapter 3, the person starts to walk around the hole, but one leg gets in there and they kind of still fall in the hole. And then in chapter 4, they still have some issues. And then chapter 5, they find a whole nother way to get around, and they successfully finally get around this hole. And it's an oversimplification of this fell forward, but that's exactly the meaning of the poem, chapter 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that it
I like that a lot. Yep.
yeah, and
Hmm.
it took, this very simplistic thing, don't fall in a hole, which metaphorically can mean a lot of things, but it took, 5 attempts to get around this hole. And that's sometimes how it goes. And that's how you fail forward. Don't give up. Life's not over. This is something fun to learn about. Be curious about how you overcome it. It's okay.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why for me, I just love just even putting like a lot of my failures out there and then just also showing that, okay, I'm going to try again, but this time I'm going to do this different or that different. And I try to be like super specific with everything. Like, okay, what caused me to fail? So that way for somebody else who may have the same problem or going through the same thing, then they can take from what I went through and probably kind of give them like a shortcut or any way possible then that it can help them. Like that's what I really want out of this.
Yeah, that's really admirable that you're transparent in that way. And you're not, kind of almost putting on a facade for social media, but you're being, Jonathan, you're being human, you're being relatable, to help other people out. That's awesome.
Because a lot of times people they do get caught up so much in this social media life because just where a lot of people they just only love to show the good. Okay, I was poor and now I'm rich. So I got this mansion, but it's like no, there were a lot of ups and downs along those roads that you don't really talk about or that you may talk about just very briefly. But no, yeah, just like you were saying, I just want people to know that I'm superhuman and that everything I've accomplished came with a lot of downs, more downs than ups. But when those ups do come, like you should take the time to celebrate them.
Absolutely. And do you think the shirt that you're wearing right now that says I hate slash love running, and it's not a slash, but it's hate written on
Yeah,
top of
yeah.
love, does it kind of represent that where it's like, there's times where it's a process to get through running.
Yes. Yes, and
Yeah.
it really is like a love hate relationship. Some people will hate getting up, but then you love the feeling afterwards, or you may hate doing the hill repeats, but then you will love come a marathon that hey you crushed it with ease. So for me, running has always been a love hate relationship, and that's kind of like life too. Like with any goal you have, because more than likely you're not going to get it the first time, and you're going to hate it. But then when you do get it, you're going to end up loving it. So I
It's gonna be
love like
great.
just yeah, I love using this wearing this shirt, and I tell people just replace running with whatever it is you're doing, and just always just remember, and it goes against the positive and the mindset thinking that there's you can either look at it one way or you can actually take more dive deep into it and then just realize that there's always two parts to it, a positive and a negative, versus
Yeah.
just letting that bad thing just overcome whatever happened.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and going back to talking about two positives and one negative, you're talking about that with your daughter earlier, and that also inspires me because with my kids, I do give me your high for the day, give me your low for the day, and give me your buffalo for the day. And the buffalo is like the wild card. Like, what the heck? Like, how did that happen today? Or I had some random luck or some random bad luck or whatever it is. But I like that it's two positives, one negative, and really fostering that mindset. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
so important to do as a parent is foster successful mindsets. And these are things that can take a long time to learn, multiple decades at times. But being
Yeah,
able to foster at a young age, it's just going to be something that's going to later on in life probably boost their quality of life because they're going to be happier. They're going to know how to overcome failures and not be scared by them.
exactly. And then so last year when I was actually planning, because I actually really wanted to do this FKT last year, but my buddy Adam he couldn't do it with me, so I tried to find like the next like biggest thing, biggest challenge. So I ran our three major airports. I'm not sure if you've been to the DMV area, DC, Virginia, Maryland. Okay, so we
No.
have BWI, Dulles, and Reagan Airport. Those three are the major airports. And so there was an FKT from Reagan to Dulles, and one is Virginia, and the other one's in DC. So a lot of people they ran those whether from Reagan to Dulles or backwards. And so I did that into the FKT for that. And then last year I was when I wasn't going to do the Beltway, I was like, well, what can I do next? And I was like, well, there's two airports already running from one to one. And I was like, and I've done that already. I was like, but no one added the third one, the BWI one. So that's in Maryland. I was like, you know what? Let me go ahead and shoot for that. Not knowing that the day I chose would be the hottest day of the year. The feel like temp reached all the way up to like 106. But
Ooh.
my daughter came along with me, or with well, actually it was the whole family. they came along with me to crew along the way. And so for me, I just love having my kids see me at my lowest and then see me overcome that. So a part of that, like I said, it was super hot and I really was at my lowest multiple times. I wanted to quit. The pain, total, it was like 62 or 63 miles, and at the time that was my second longest run. And so I was in a lot of pain. So just dealing with everything, I was really at my lowest. But then finding ways to get to that next checkpoint, so to speak, or cruise stop. I just always had to kind of just come up with ways just to get there, and just so for my kids just actually be there and witness that and always see me. Okay, well, he was at his lowest and he wanted to quit, but he found a way to overcome that and get to that next challenge, and then reach his ultimate challenge of running all three airports and setting the new FKT for that. So I know there are some people who just want their kids to look at them being strong and being their superhero, and they only want to see the good. But for me, I want my kids to see both. Like, I'm super transparent with them. They come to like a lot of track workouts with me, and they also just see my training. Like when I come home super sore, hurt, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to run tomorrow, but it's like, even though I don't want to do that, but I'm still going to do that. And I try to explain to them my whys, and how, even though if they don't do sports, just how they can relate to this with work or whatever it is that they pursue in the future. Because there's going to be a lot of days when you're down, but you're just going to have to learn to find ways, even if it's pre-planned. Even yeah, even if it's pre-planned, you're still going to have days where things pop up and the unexpected. So you should always learn how to get through the things now, so that when that unexpected does come, and not saying everything's going to go as planned, but you'll just be better prepared for it, learn how to get through it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, as you mentioned before, with, your father, having a plan is good, but it's not always going to work out. And with the kids, that's life. Like their plan's not going to go as they expect. There's going to need to be adaptation, the ability to adapt, like that's something that's so powerful. And being able to get yourself back onto that track, and, knowing that their dad is, as human as everyone else, and is, has faced those and is willing to share that knowledge and to show them through his actions, the way that he's overcome that. I mean, your kids are lucky.
Thank you. In the end, like, because like with races, I have been more now. I have been winning like a lot of races, and I always tell them I don't want y'all to get focused on just the winning part. Like, what goes on into winning? Like, that's what y'all really need to focus on. Because with kids, it's just like, okay, you won a big race, like because like my son, he's 8, and then for a long time he's like, "Are you famous? Are you famous?" I'm like, the fame part, it doesn't matter. Like, what does matter is that I put all my effort in training, and a lot of days when I tell you I'm going out for another run, another run, another run. Like, this is why. Like, you're gonna have to make sacrifices in life, and there's a lot of people who are like, there's a even balance, but there really is not an even balance. Like, there is going to be something that you're going to have to give up, whether it's time or money. You're really ultimately going to have to find that one thing that you do want to give up. And then, like for me, I gave up watching TV, and instead of spending time watching TV, I go out for that 2, 3, maybe 4 hour run or so. But yeah, you're going to have to find something that you are ultimately at the end of the day going to have to give up. And then so
Yeah.
I just tell my kids, like, there's times where I can't go swimming with them because I have to get that run in before it storms or something like that. So it's like, instead of just focusing on being famous or any of that stuff, it's just like, I want you to see like the real meaning behind all of this.
Yeah, getting after the process and not just, I think, it's a bit of a trap to focus on the
Mm-hmm.
outcome.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
hey, like, yeah, like I won this race, but I think running is 98% the training, and then you have the one race, and it's the process. And I think that was something that, going back to Kobe Bryant, he talked a lot about was, he didn't really focus on necessarily being famous, being big, being the best, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it was. He just focused on getting better, learning how
Better,
to do,
exactly.
going back to my example, left-handed layups or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is realistic.
Yeah.
Going from
And
point A all the way to winning a race, like that's not realistic.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, the kids just got home. Sorry about
Oh, that's okay, Jonathan. Well,
that.
hey, why
But
don't I ask you one more question? Yeah, you mind if I ask one more question and I'll let you
Yeah,
go?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So hey, last thing that I wanted to ask you about is what's your recommendation for people who are interested in running? They've heard this podcast, maybe they've listened to Georgia Miller with mental toughness. They're interested in running, but they don't have a background in running. Like, what are your recommendations for getting started with it?
I'd say first and foremost is just go out there and just start. Whether it's running one block or two blocks, because a lot of times we're focused on so much all the details, all the hows, or what do I need to do versus just getting out there and just getting started. A lot of people say one day, one day. We'll turn that one day into today's day one. So just switching that mindset, just go outside and run maybe a block and see where your fitness is or what you're actually capable of first. Because a lot of people that, oh, I can't run. But I can guarantee you that if there's a dog chasing after you, then you're going to start running. It may not be fast or it may not look pretty, but you can run. So just switch your mindset, first of all. And yeah, like I said, just don't think that you're just going to jump up and run a mile. Don't be afraid or embarrassed. Oh, I only can run one block. Because honestly, that's how I started. I hated running. I used to always say I wouldn't run. So just getting out there and just get comfortable with running from maybe the top of your street to the bottom of the street, until you get super comfortable or confident enough to move that goalpost a little bit down, so that one street may turn into two streets or maybe two stoplights. And then when you get a little bit comfortable, then you can start worrying about time or any of that stuff. But there's a lot of books and out there available, and a lot of people are on social media nowadays, and there's tons of groups. There's one group that I'm with, called Boston Buddies. Um, and even though it's really more so about people trying to qualify for a Boston Marathon, but there's also a huge amount of people in there who don't even really want to qualify for Boston, but they're just in there to learn, get tips and tricks for running, whatever their goals may be, whether it's an ultra run or so. So yeah, then there's a lot of groups out there, and there's people actually willing to help you. And that's one thing that I found along my journey too, is just don't be afraid to ask for the help or put your goals or whatever it is out there and see who reaches back to you. The power of such social media nowadays is truly incredible.
It is. It is. It's a great way to find community to help you achieve your goals. And for those people that are going to start off with doing lower mileage, like let's say running down the block, or even running to the end of your driveway, or running down to halfway through your street. Though I think it's really important that those people with the mindset perceive themselves as runners, because they're absolutely runners. And when you start
Exactly.
perceiving yourself, I am a runner, then that mindset takes hold and you start building up from there. You go from one block to two block to three blocks to half
Exactly.
a mile to a mile. And so I think it's really important, the mindset stuff that you talked about, to perceive yourself as a runner. It's so important.
Yeah, you don't have to hit a certain pace to call yourself a runner. No,
No.
like none of that stuff matters. Yeah, if you're out there doing it, then yes, you're a runner, just like what you were saying.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But yeah, first and foremost, it's just all really about just changing your mindset.
Yeah. Jonathan, it's been just so much fun to talk with you today. I feel like we could talk for another 2 hours.
Yeah, me
It's
too.
just,
Yes.
well, hopefully you and I cross paths. Hopefully I see you out there. I'll be at I don't know if you'll be at the Chicago Marathon. My wife is running. I'm going to be supporting on the sidelines, cheering loudly for her.
Oh
But
yes,
hope,
I'll definitely stay in touch with you because I'm planning to come out there and support too. I have a lot of friends running it, so and then I've always said that I just want to just be on the opposite side for once. So I was like, you know what? I was like, let me just try to make my way out there and just cheer people on. So
yeah, keep in
hopefully I
touch.
do.
Keep in
Hmm.
touch. And if you do end up heading out there, email me. I'll pass you my cell phone number. You can
Perfect.
shoot me a text, and hopefully we can meet up and say hi in person.
Okay, and good luck to you on your run. Is it next month? It is.
It is September 15th. So yeah, it's I think I told you before, it's 5 weeks. That's pretty much 4 weeks right down to the dot here, because today's
Yeah.
August 14th. Yeah. So thank you. I appreciate it. As I said before, I definitely have a little bit of nerves, but that's part of the process.
Yeah, it's normal too. Yep, it's normal.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
thanks for having me on. I truly appreciate talking with you, man. It's been a good
Yeah,
one.
it's you've been a wonderful guest. So thank you so much for delivering, very great content that the listeners can relate to. Thank you so much for being a transparent person, opening up about your experiences, the tough parts, the good stuff, everything in between. I think that's really important for inspiring other people. So lastly, I just want to say thanks for being an inspiring person.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Okay, Jonathan, let's call an episode. I'm going to throw on that outro music.
Yeah.